The recording and meeting presentation will be posted to the Vision Zero website, along with all other Vision Zero related materials, including meeting minutes and upcoming meeting schedules. All panelists will be responsible to mute themselves until they speak. Due to FOIA and public access laws, please refrain from using the chat feature for anything other than our ability to coordinate and help speakers who need assistance using Zoom. The question and answer field at the bottom of the participant pane will be used for public comment. Please refrain from entering public comments into the Q&A field until the public comment portion of the meeting takes place. Public comment will take place at the end of the meeting, and participants may raise their virtual hand to signify a desire to speak and wait to be recognized. To do so, you may open the participant pane and click raised hand at the bottom of the panel. Participants may also utilize the question and answer field at the bottom of the participant pane. In-person comments will be prioritized ahead of those entered into the Q&A field. And with that, I'd like to officially turn it over to our Deputy Commissioner, Garrett Iccolito, to get us started.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And really want to thank Aaron for the hard work in pulling today's meeting together, as well as all the various subcommittee chairs who have worked diligently with all their subcommittee members over the past few months to come up with proposals that they shared with us. So I just want to take a few minutes to explain what we're going to do today. Actually, first, let me move to adopt the minutes for the October 4th. Oh, I'm skipping around. Sorry, Aaron. Never mind. Go back. So I'm not going to jump around. Sorry about that. So I want to just thank everyone. Today we have some designees joining us from some of the agencies who are not our normal council members. It's a tough time of year, so appreciate Sergeant DeCoco and Eric Scoville joining us from their respective agencies, as well as all of our traditional council members. So if you go to the next slide, Aaron, just a reminder who's here on the council. Our 7 agencies: DOT, Public Health, Emergency Services, Public Protection, DMV, State Department of Education, Aging Disability Services, and the Division of Criminal Justice. Next slide. So I asked Aaron to include these next 2 slides to just a reminder of why we're here and why this is such an important discussion. This slide here shows the year-to-date traffic deaths in our state as of December 5th. And you compare where we were in 2019, 2020, 2021 to see that we have 354 as of December 5th compared to 240 on December 5th in 2019. It's a stark reminder of how many people will not be able to spend the holidays with their family this year. The next slide. Want to see if there's a motion to adopt the October 4th meeting minutes, which were sent out to the committee members in advance.
Hey, Garrett, this is John Slipka. I'll make the motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Susan Loganwell.
Thanks, Susan. All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposed? Seeing none. Okay. Next slide, Aaron. So want to talk a little bit about where we are today. As I started, before I jumped ahead, we had our 4 subcommittees, did a lot of work to get us to this point. The information on the slide talks about the process that was followed. They submitted their policy proposals to our council in advance so that we could review all of their policy proposals. And then essentially what we're going to do today is we took those proposals from each subcommittee. We distilled them down into what we will be voting on as recommendations to send to the legislature in our year-end report. And some of them are going to be identical to what the policy proposals were submitted. Some are going to be slightly different, and some are ones that some of our members added ourselves to be included in a final report, and we're not necessarily part of the subcommittee proposal. There is one caveat, which is the equity subcommittee. We received those policy proposals late, so we will be tabling those for today's discussion. So we'll just focus on engineering, enforcement, and education proposals. Equity, we're going to table for today. We will discuss them, we'll digest them as council members, and then we will make a determination which ones to accept and advance to the legislature change and include it in our final report. We just won't be able to do that today because we weren't given enough time to analyze all of those and have a detailed vote on each of them today. That's the only caveat for today's discussion. We're going to take an opportunity. I'm going to bring up each of the engineering ones. Sergeant DeCoco is going to bring up each of the enforcement ones. Eric Scoville will bring up each of the education ones. And we're going to vote on each one independently. And this is important because, some of our council members may have a conflict where maybe they're funded partially through one of the proposals that helps fund their activities in their department, and they may want to abstain from that vote. But we also want to provide an opportunity for council members to vote no if they want to. And it's the final thing I'll bring up before we move into the phase of discussing each of the proposals recommendations is that, the votes today represent us as individuals. It doesn't necessarily represent our agencies. And I think that's important. So you're going to see me bring up things, asking the Department of Transportation to do things. I'm bringing up on behalf of the council to submit to the legislature and to submit on behalf of our council to the DOT for our DOT's awareness. So it may seem a little odd for me to be bringing up a proposal from the Vision Zero Council asking the DOT to do something. But all of us on the council, we're representing collective 7 state agencies and in representing ourselves on this council. But we all have subject area expertise. So with that, we're going to move on, I think, to the next phase, which is the engineering recommendations. So I'm going to walk through each one very briefly, and then I'll ask for a vote on each one independently. So the first policy recommendation that came out from the discussions of the engineering subcommittee is a proposal to require a complete streets plan at the municipal level. This proposal is that if a municipality is going to apply for some competitive discretionary grants at the state level, and they use the community connectivity grant program at the DOT as an example, that the subcommittee recommended that, to be eligible, you should have a complete streets plan. So there's a thoughtful plan behind the applications that are being put forward. That is policy recommendation number 1. So I'm going to, Aaron, do you want to have me just open each vote before we go on to the next recommendation?
Yeah, I think that works.
Okay.
I think that works best.
Okay, sorry, everyone. It'll take a little while to go through all 3 subcommittees, but on policy recommendation number 1, all those in favor of policy recommendation number 1? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any no's? Okay. So moving on to policy recommendation number 2. This one is clarifying Connecticut DOT's authority to acquire land for trails. So currently, Connecticut DOT may not have legislative authority to condemn right-of-way, which means to acquire property for off-road trails or bike and pedestrian facilities. With trail networks growing to support non-motorized travel, this authority can facilitate the expansion of these networks. I think this, I'm not sure 100%, but I believe this stems from a discussion about the Farmington Canal Trail, which there's a little bit of a gap that needs to acquire some property to finish the final gap in the trail network to go from New Haven to Northampton, Massachusetts. So this is, I believe, tied to this, as well as future trails that people are looking to build out. This was a legislative proposal last year. For full awareness for everyone, Connecticut DOT did propose this legislation last session. Okay, so I'm going to open a vote on policy recommendation number 2. All those in favor of policy recommendation number 2?
Aye. Jumped ahead.
Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain from this one, Garrett.
Yep. And any no's? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to policy recommendation number 3. Adoption of an intersection control evaluation policy. This is a recommendation that Connecticut DOT should adopt an intersection control evaluation policy, or an ICE policy. An ICE is a data-driven, performance-based framework to screen intersection alternatives and identify an optimal solution. This can provide consistent documentation to support transparency of the decisions that are made, increasing awareness of innovative solutions and objective performance metrics for decision-making. Very technical. This is the engineering subcommittee, but ICE is something that is Federal Highway does have as one of their ways to improve intersection safety. It's something I've learned a bit about over the past several weeks, looking into this. So this is one of those where I said it'd be a little weird for me to be asking for a recommendation to encourage ConnDOT to do something. But I'm going to open it up for a vote. Policy recommendation number 3. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any abstentions? I'm going to abstain just because I'm not going to recommend myself on this one, but I do support it. And any no's? Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on to policy recommendation number 4. This is one that did not come from the committee, but came from discussions within the council members. I do think this is important to look at. So this is a recommendation to ask Connecticut DOT to study specific traffic movement regulations. So it's an ask that ConnDOT should study whether and how the Idaho stop could be legalized in Connecticut, which is a way for bikers to not have to come to a complete stop if there's no conflicting traffic in the intersection. It's common in other states. I don't know the history of why it's called Idaho stop, but that's the name, as well as whether to prohibit right on red at intersections with crosswalks. It is that's an issue. We continue to see pedestrian fatalities where people get impatient, turn on red, even though someone is in the crosswalk. So this is specifically just asking Connecticut to study whether and how these could be done. So I'm going to open up.
And I have
you have a question?
a clarifying question. So the Idaho stop, just explain that to me again.
It's almost essentially like a biker would yield instead of coming to a complete stop, just because oftentimes it's less, it's for a biker, it's unlike a car where if you have to come to a complete stop, it's difficult to get going again on your bike. So this would be, they can slow down to a very slow yield. And if there's no traffic, they can continue through instead of like a motor vehicle where you have to come to a complete stop.
Okay.
And this is not to recommend implementing it. It's just to study whether and how it could be done in Connecticut.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So any other questions on this one? Okay, I'm going to open it up for vote on policy recommendation number 4. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to abstain. Any other abstentions? And any no's?
I think I'm going to be a no on this one.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay. Aaron, is that it for engineering? Oh, yeah, sorry. So
Sorry for
engineering,
getting that up. Yeah, we just have a couple other cross endorsements that we wanted to put forth.
yeah, so the engineering subcommittee did, we wanted to include to make the public aware, the engineering subcommittee did have some cross endorsements of other subcommittees' proposals and recommendations moving forward. So they did endorse and support the enforcement committee's proposal on speed control measures, automated speed enforcement measures. They did endorse a continued discussion and collaboration between subcommittees outside of the formal quarterly meetings of the council. And they endorsed the continuation of the council into future years. And so they think it's important because it's going to take a long-term commitment to implement these current and future recommendations. Okay. Is that it for engineering, Aaron? Or am I skipping something again? Okay. I got it right this time.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, we got it.
I'm going to turn over Sergeant Coco to walk us through the enforcement recommendations.
Thank you, Garrett. And first of all, before we begin, I just want to big thanks to my co-chair, Terry Thompson, and Jackie McMahon from DCJ for the legal analysis for these proposals. A lot of work went into these, and I hope the council is satisfied with them. So the first thing we'll talk about is the 4 policy recommendations that we've come up with as a subcommittee. The first is to enact a helmet law for all motorcycle riders consistent with our surrounding states. Second is to establish a fatal collision reduction team to engage in high visibility enforcement blitzes based upon data. Third is to implement automated traffic enforcement to include red light cameras, for example. And the fourth is to enact a prohibition on open alcohol containers in all motor vehicles. Next slide. So the first one we'll talk about is enacting a helmet law for all motorcycle riders consistent with our other surrounding states. So in Connecticut, roughly over the past 5 years, unfortunately, Connecticut has seen roughly 190 fatalities, which could be directly correlated to not wearing a helmet. So for roughly over the past 5 years, we've seen anywhere from 36 to 41 fatalities in a given year for those that are unhelmeted, whether that be the motorcycle operator or the motorcycle rider. So in summary, 190 unhelmeted motorcycle operators or passengers were fatally injured over the past 5 years. Next slide. The second policy recommendation is a, before we start that, can we put that up for a vote, Garrett?
Yeah, I think that probably works best if you want to.
Hey, Garrett, I'm in
do the
a
vote.
unique position where I'm representing the agency, but I'm also acting as the subcommittee chair, so I'll likely abstain from all of these. So we're going to bring that up for that, Garrett, for that first one for a vote.
Yep. So first one, motorcycle helmet law. Open that for a vote. All those in favor signify.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any abstentions? Sergeant Coco. Okay. Any no's? Okay. Great. Keep going, Sergeant.
Okay. Policy recommendation number 2. The second policy recommendation that we looked at was a fatal collision reduction team and high visibility enforcement blitzes that is completely data driven. Next slide. So the premise behind this proposal is to gather police officers and troopers from the state police and municipal police departments, including those that are specially trained to include drug recognition experts, those that have specialized training in drug detection, the level below DREs, commercial motor vehicle enforcement, etc. So specially trained officers in a gathering from both the state and municipal police agencies. and in order to conduct high visibility enforcement blitzes for those areas, those high collision corridors across our state. The premise behind it is to identify those traffic violations that directly correlate with fatal collisions. So for example, if Interstate 84 in the Hartford metro area is identified as a high fatality rate, identifying the infractions or violations that directly correlate or the causation for those particular crashes. For example, speeding. So with those identification of those crash locations, these officers, through coordinated efforts through the state and municipal police departments, would engage in high visibility enforcement efforts, targeting those violations in those identified areas, utilizing the special team. A big part of this proposal will be public input should be solicited to solicit input from the public to identify areas of concern or specific violations that they feel that are contributing to these fatality rates.
Great. Any questions on this one before we move to a vote? Okay. So recommendation number 2, the high visibility enforcement. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Susan and Sergeant Takoko. Any noes? Okay, great. Excellent.
Okay. And our third policy recommendation is to implement automated traffic enforcement. So what do we mean by that? Next slide. In our robust discussions, we just looked into the fact that looking at our other states, determining whether or not automated enforcement would be applicable here in Connecticut. So what our recommendation is specifically is the Connecticut General Assembly should examine the best practices in other 18 states that have speed cameras and the other 22 states that have red light cameras and advance legislation that would authorize these automated enforcement locations with a documented history of excessive speeding or resulting in serious crashes from excessive speeding or red light violations. So one thing to really consider as part of this policy recommendation is the current DOT pilot program that was already placed and is launching in early 2023. Furthermore, the approval of a third party, such as the Office of State Traffic Administrator, should be required to deployment of these automated enforcement cameras on municipal roadways, ensuring that there is evidence justifying the specific location. So again, data-driven, but the policy specifically is to examine the best practices in those 18 states for speed cameras and best practices in examining the 22 states that have the red light cameras.
Okay, thank you. So, and just to clarify on this one, we did hear from, several council members. So the language here is a little bit different from what the subcommittee necessarily gave us, reflecting some of the council members, recommendations that really we should be looking at what the other states are doing. Consider the results of the ConDOT pilot that's launching in the next few months, and really have it be data-driven, evidence-based as to where these are going. There have been concerns in other states that they disproportionately target specific populations, but having something like OSTA, doesn't necessarily have to be OSTA, have someone from the outside validate the decision to place in a specific location, is something that was asked for by council members. So, okay, so we're going to move for a vote on this one. All those in favor of recommendation number 3?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Abstentions? Okay. Great. And no, I don't see any no's. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think there's another one. Yep.
And last but not least, enact a prohibition on all open containers, alcohol containers in motor vehicles. The premise behind this is Connecticut has legislation that prohibits drinking alcohol while operating a motor vehicle under Connecticut General Statute 53A-213. However, currently does not prohibit a passenger in that motor vehicle, for example, having an open container. So drinking while driving in Connecticut is a Class C misdemeanor. Unlike any other states, there is no statute that prohibits simply having an open container of alcohol in a vehicle or passengers' consumption of alcohol while in a vehicle in operation. So ultimately, we're looking to prohibit drinking alcohol while having an open container in all motor vehicles.
Okay. Moving for a vote on recommendation number 4. All those in favor of banning open containers, signify by saying aye. Okay, abstentions. Okay, and no's.
No,
Thank you, everyone. I think that's it for enforcement, right, Sergeant?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sergeant Takoko. Moving on to Vision Zero Council Education recommendations. Eric, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, good to see you, Deputy Commissioner. For everybody here, my name is Eric Scoville. I'm the Director of Communications here at the State Department of Education. I'm here on behalf of my colleague Keith Norton, who is unable to be here today. So I'm just going to quickly jump on in and walk through these recommendations. We have 5 in total. The first recommendation is to utilize schools to better educate children about road safety. This recommendation would create a Vision Zero schools program and is based off of efforts in North Dakota. This recommendation would create a list of criteria for schools to become labeled as a Vision Zero school, which would and could include traffic safety education to students, peer-to-peer education, outreach to parents, as well as other things. Ideally, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Education would not need to do much of that education. We would put the programs together, the tools together, and share that and encourage districts to participate. This would not be a mandate. It would be an optional program as we are a local control state. So I'll turn that back over to you, Garrett.
Great, yeah, and I'll just flag for everyone's awareness, the Federal Safe Routes to School Initiative, Connecticut DOT is in the process of trying to recruit for a Safe Routes to School permanent full-time coordinator here who could assist in this effort as well. We've posted it a couple times. We're going to try and post a third time and actually get someone in the door this time. So I'm going to move for a vote on recommendation number 1 about using the schools to better educate children about road safety. All those in favor? Aye.
aye.
Okay. Any abstentions? Okay. And any no's? Great. Thank you. Next.
The second recommendation is to utilize the judicial system in driver retraining. The rationale for this recommendation is that the criminal justice system provides an opportunity for driver retraining, specifically for traffic offenders. This recommendation would create an offense-specific retraining class, which could be used to expand the operator retraining program to include an option for the judicial branch to offer a class tailored to an offense as part of a plea. An example of this is if the driver received a distracted driving ticket, they could take a short class on the types of distractions and why they're dangerous. This would require some more work, and this would have a longer time horizon for implementation. So I just wanted to mention that there as well. So I'll turn that back over to you, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you. Jackie, can I ask you a question? Do we do something similar today through Central Infractions Bureau or some other for some type of infractions? Because it seems like this is a good way to expand upon what is a proven way.
So broadly, no. There are some very specific programs like the SMART program that was used for younger drivers.
Okay.
They could take that class and do away with their cell phone or speeding ticket, something like that, but not for adults. And if I can just piggyback on that, as to this recommendation, I'm just going to throw it out there that perhaps it should be more general if it goes to the legislature. I'm not sure that it's as beneficial to tie it as part of a plea deal as opposed to allowing the person to earn a dismissal of the charges, or having this be an option in lieu of a fine to try to capture those individuals who have some financial difficulties with paying. I think in the criminal justice system, we're moving away from monetary consequences. So this could be another opportunity to further address the conduct rather than the financial penalties. So.
So I'm going to, Eric, if you're okay, propose that we vote on the modified version that Jackie is recommending, and we can work on the language after the meeting.
Yes, I'm fine with that recommendation.
Okay, great. So all those in favor of recommendation 2 as to be modified with Jackie's recommended tweaks to focus on eliminating the monetary penalty and making it a little more general. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Don't see any abstentions. Don't see any no's. Okay, great. Number 3.
Yes, recommendation 3 is to increase options for driver retraining. The rationale for this recommendation is after initial driver training, there are no driver retraining opportunities except for an optional class for older drivers. There is concern that drivers are not made aware of the new laws or how to use new infrastructure, among other things. This is a 2-part recommendation. Part 1 would require a skills refresher at other points in an individual's lifetime. We test drivers once at the onset, but nothing after. This would not be optional, but would be required, especially for those who have been driving for 40 to 50 years. The second part of this recommendation is to offer a statewide incentive-based driver education program for drivers to get a refresher on law updates and other safety reminders. There is a note on this one that all educational materials should be looked at through the lens of accessibility, and I would extend that to probably all of the recommendations from the Education Subcommittee. Over to you, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions on this one before we move? Okay. All those in favor of recommendation number 3? Aye. Abstentions? Susan? Okay. And any no's? Okay. Next, Eric.
The 4th recommendation is to utilize the Department of Motor Vehicles to educate drivers on a more frequent basis. The rationale behind this recommendation is that the Department of Motor Vehicles has frequent touch points where they can impart new information and reminders to current drivers throughout their lives. This is another 2-part recommendation. Part 1 would empower the Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles to have more frequent engagement with customers and drivers at every available opportunity, such as at license renewals and registration. This could be in the form of a video that must be watched in its entirety before an online application could be processed. This video would be an update on new laws that impact drivers and pedestrians. The second part of this recommendation is to incorporate Connecticut driver training materials within the DMV process of awarding Connecticut licenses to out-of-state drivers when they become Connecticut residents. The focus of this training would be on Connecticut-specific laws, as well as key points that have been implicated in car to pedestrian and car to cyclist fatalities.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I think of all the aspects of government agencies, DMV probably has some of the most constant touch points with residents. And then part 2, I know other states do this. My cousin moved from Connecticut to Oregon, and to transfer her license, she had to take a specific module that was specific to their laws out there. So it definitely is something that is not uncommon in other states.
And laws definitely vary from state to state significantly. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote on recommendation number 4. All those
Can
in
I just
favor?
ask a
Oh, yeah,
question
sorry,
here
Jackie.
first?
Yep.
Part 1, this may have just been an oversight in the preparation, but it indicates that the video would be an update on new laws that impact drivers and pedestrians. certainly bicyclists too, or all roadway users.
Yeah.
Would be the only addition I would add there.
Okay. Great point, Aaron. And just make sure to update that language there.
Will do.
Thanks. Okay. All those in favor of recommendation number 4 with the modification proposed by Jackie? In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, seeing no abstentions and no votes. Great. Last one, Eric.
Yes, the final recommendation here is to utilize the Department of Public Health to educate around emerging traffic safety issues. The rationale behind this is that the Department of Public Health is a leading source for safety and health information, and could perhaps, with additional funding, play a role in traffic safety messaging. This recommendation is specifically focused around driving under the influence of prescription drugs, with an emphasis on opioids, over-the-counter medications, and cannabis use. DPH could choose 1 or 2 local health departments and/or health districts to collaborate on an educational initiative about the dangers of driving under the influence of prescription drugs and other drugs. It could include outreach to pharmacies or hospitals, or possibly even methadone clinics that could themselves communicate information to drivers receiving medications.
Thank you. Susan, we're talking about you here, so I want to make sure you have a comment, an opportunity to comment before we vote.
No, this looks good, as it's written. But I mean, I know that this is a recommendation, so I'd like to be able to say that we could choose, other than just local health departments or health districts, there are other entities that we could work with within the municipalities on this.
We could tweak the language to just reflect to choose local health partners.
Yeah. That would be good. Thank you.
Okay.
And there might be crossover with consumer protection on this one as well, with prescription drugs and in the marijuana program.
Great point. Yeah, because I saw I think sales are beginning January 10th.
Yes.
Okay. So all those in favor of recommendation number 5 with the change about local health partners, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any abstentions? Any noes? Okay. Great. So I think that's it for your recommendations, right, Eric?
Yes, that completes our recommendations. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. Aaron, next slide. So I mentioned equity recommendations. We received them late, so what we'll be doing is I shared them last night with the council members. We will review them. I'm going to ask everyone to review them, take your time to digest each one, send back your comments to myself and Aaron. And then what we'll do is we'll package it as a final package, and we'll just make a decision via email as to which ones we support, including in our final package to go to the legislature next month. I want to provide plenty of time for people to review each of those, because they did have a bunch of recommendations or proposals in their packet. And DMV is not on the call today either, so just want to make sure we give them an opportunity, because I know they were involved in that subcommittee.
Garrett, the only thing I would add to that is once that vote is taken, we can post that package to our Vision Zero website so that the public can see what was voted on.
Great point. Yeah, so we will, after this meeting, we'll post the final proposals from each of the subcommittees online, including obviously the PowerPoint from today's presentation. Okay. Next slide. So, and to just be procedural, one thing I would ask from the council is, based on the votes today, I'd ask for just one more motion to give Aaron the ability to take what we voted on today, put it into, I'm going to help you, Aaron, don't worry, put it into one final report, and ask for your preemptive vote of support for us to transmit all of these over in a final report to the General Assembly. because we'll need to do that before our next meeting. We'll make sure to share the draft with you so you can flag in writing any concerns before it's transmitted. But I just want to make sure to cross all the T's and dot the I's to get that preemptive ability for DOT to transmit on the council's behalf in early January. So do I have a motion to give DOT authority to act on the council's behalf to transmit the recommendations after you've seen the draft of those recommendations in final written form?
I'll make
I'll
that
make a
motion,
motion.
Okay.
or I'll second.
And a second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Seeing none. Great. Okay. So Aaron and I will work on that, and we'll circulate it via email for everyone to get a glance on it, make any tweaks before it's transmitted in January. Okay, so I think one thing I do want to flag before I turn it back to Aaron is, there were a lot of people who were involved in developing a lot of the proposals that came forward, a lot of stakeholders participating on our quarterly calls or council meetings. So, there are plenty of opportunities in the future for individuals to support what the council is submitting. I know there are, councils of governments, there's municipalities who are very interested in some of these proposals that are being, or recommendations that we will be transmitting to the legislature. I think we as a council would welcome any support for our recommendations that, there may be out in the public or in the municipal sphere or in the stakeholder sphere. How you go about supporting these recommendations is entirely up to our stakeholders to do so. I know our legislature and our legislators are always accessible and open and easily contacted by the public and by stakeholders. So I know some of these are going to be contentious and the legislature may not take them all up. But I think we all, by voting on them today, believe it's worthy of a discussion in the legislature next session. So we'd welcome any opportunities for stakeholders to weigh in with the legislature after we transmit them in early January. I think it'd be actually beneficial for the legislature to hear from others outside of our 7 agencies on these concepts. So Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Garrett. I know, we don't have meetings set up yet for next year, but we're going to work to do that. Obviously, the council is going to continue its work. I think I heard that the council members support ongoing work by the subcommittees. So I imagine that those subcommittees that are already set up will continue their work. And I think what we can do prior or while we get meetings set up for next year is reach out to both the council and the subcommittees and get some ideas as to what that ongoing work is going to look like. Will it be continued policy proposals put forward to the legislature? Are there other things we can do? How, as you mentioned, Garrett, how can those subcommittees continue to work collaboratively together in between those quarterly meetings to support each other? Those are all things we can look at for next year. So we will circulate around some emails or messages and get some feedback on that prior to setting up our meetings next year. I don't know if you have any comments on that before I go forward.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to the other council members for any of their thoughts. One thing, Aaron, I want to put on your radar, you and I have talked about, is maybe we can invite one of the leaders of the Vision Zero network to come in and talk about what's happening at the municipal level across the country as well.
Yeah, I was just going to go there as well. Now that we have the ability to set up, the municipalities have the ability to set up their own Vision Zero activities. At least one community has reached out to us thus far. And I think we should probably consider ways to support those municipal level Vision Zero groups. So that's definitely something that we can do in the coming year.
Anyone else have any other thoughts they want to put on the table?
So just follow up to that about people coming in to give presentations. How would we go about if we wanted to have someone come in and give a presentation that we know has been working, say like in Massachusetts or somewhere else in New England? that we're connected to, like on the public health level, with regard to reducing motor vehicle injuries. So if I have somebody in mind, do I just let you, Aaron, know, and then we would get in touch with that person?
Yeah, I think that would make sense. And, I imagine that there's not a whole lot of folks that we would invite that would be controversial, but we could always run it by the council beforehand. But
Sure.
I think that would be a good way to do it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And we're always looking for content and topics of discussion for these meetings. So additional support from the council is always appreciated.
Great.
Anything else before we turn over? I think what's next? Public comment?
Yes.
So before we go to public comment, I just want to thank everyone again for your participation over the course of the year. And I look forward to continuing to work with you all in my new role here at the DOT. And I will just flag from the outset, I'll continue to chair the council as because I don't have any deputies lined up. So I will continue to chair the council for this foreseeable future. But really appreciated the opportunity to work with all of you through the course of the past year. So Aaron.
Same here.
Thanks. Aaron, I'll turn it over to you for public comment.
Sure. Just as a reminder to anybody who wants to participate in public comment, we would like you to raise your virtual hand to speak and wait to be recognized. To do so, you can open the participant pane and click the raise hand button at the bottom of the panel. Participants may also utilize the question and answer field at the bottom of the participant pane. In-person comments will be prioritized ahead of those entered into the Q&A field. So with that, if there are any folks who are looking to make comments, now is the time to do so. Roger Cron wants to confirm that all the recommendations passed. Is that correct?
I believe so. There was one that was 3 yes, 2 abstentions, 1 no. I think all the others had a larger majority. So yes.
If there's any other questions, now's the time to do so. We had a question come in from Sarah Roy. Thank you for all the great information and congrats to Garrett. Question about engineering recommendation number 1. What is meant by adopted for complete streets policies? Some municipalities have these policies as endorsed and not enforceable, and they don't use them. So clarification on what adopted means.
That's a great question. So I think in my mind, so Connecticut DOT has a complete streets policy that is adopted and guides our decision-making process here. Is incorporated into how we design projects or determine what is built. So endorsing complete streets concepts is not necessarily the same as adopting complete streets policy. So I think we can refine the language a little bit in the final recommendation document to make that differential there, because I think just endorsing the concepts doesn't necessarily mean that the municipality is going to make any changes into how they're selecting what is being built in their community. So I think something really has to be part of their decision-making process.
Okay, thank you. We had a question coming from Melissa Evans. Will the VZC be recommending anything with regard to requiring training for local traffic authorities?
So that was not in any of the final proposals that came over to us. So, but I can say that is something that the Connecticut DOT is certainly looking at. We believe it is important, but it wasn't in the final packets that came over from the subcommittees. But I agree, it is very important for local traffic authorities to have training in safety areas.
Thank you. If there's any other questions or comments, now's the time to make them. We'll give it another minute, but I haven't seen any others come in. Sandy Fry asks, isn't the recommendation for adoption of a complete streets plan not a policy? These are different things.
I will have to go back and look at what the subcommittee provided. I don't necessarily agree they're different things. But we'll go back and look at what the subcommittee provided.
Any other questions? We have one comment, but I'll hold that just until make sure that we don't have any more questions come in. I don't see any more questions. We do have a comment from Amy Watkins about World Remembrance Day. There's an event in Hartford. If anyone wants to participate, they can comment. They can contact Amy or Judith Proctor.
Great. And Aaron, just to confirm, we'll be posting all materials on the Vision Zero Council website. And that website also has the email address to contact the council if there are comments after this meeting as well.
Yep, we'll get the recording up as well as the minutes from the prior meeting, and all of the original subcommittee proposals will go up as well if anyone wanted to check those against what was put forth today. So that will all be there.
Great.
Not seeing anything else from anybody.
And yeah, not seeing any others come in. I'm going to see if there's a motion to adjourn.
Deputy Commissioner, if I could just have a moment of personal
Yeah.
privilege
Of course.
to congratulate you on your nomination to be Commissioner of the Department.
I'm going to revoke your personal privilege. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. So. Okay. So John, do you want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Seeing no abstentions and no one objecting, we'll call this meeting to adjourn. Thanks, everyone. Have a great holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.